It's Thursday, October 2nd, 2014. I'm Jimmy Principe.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 91. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy counts only in base 9, and I attempt to bring the weight of the internet down upon my own head. But we start tonight with Microsoft's utter inability to count things.
I never thought I would ask for us to have a return of Balmer. But this week, Microsoft announced its next iteration of its Windows operating system.
Hey, Steve, what are we going to call the next version of Windows?
And it's not what you would expect. So the previous version was Windows 8, might I remind everyone.
Windows 8 the Ocho.
Windows 10, not the logical Windows 9, will be the next operating system to bear the much used and much maligned Windows name. So what's new? Well, almost everything rumored about this OS is coming
They
true.
can't count.
Other than the fact that, we had been on this very logical, Windows 7, some convoluted answer as to why it was the 7th Windows.
Yes.
We had Windows 8. Windows 10.
Clearly the 8th version of Windows.
They missed. And
He went
this
like
swing and a
this.
miss.
We went like this. We're like, where'd he go?
He was like, where'd you go?
There are actually interesting things about this operating system.
There are actually interesting things about this operating system. So you remember that whole thing about the start menu coming back? Well, guess what? The start menu is coming back.
But it's even more interesting than you think it's going to be.
Yeah. So they're also integrating the kind of modern UI,
Universal
live tiles,
apps.
and all of the apps that would run full screen only in Windows 8 are now going to have the ability to be, well, here's one for you, windowed.
Run in Windows. Like
Run in
Windows 1.0.
And then be placed in different areas of the desktop.
Jimmy, are you telling me this is an operating system with a windowed graphical user interface?
I am.
Huh. Who would have thought of that?
I know, right?
Xerox PERC in the late 70s. Steve Jobs in the early 80s?
It's also going to kind of minimize that whole charms menu thing.
See, I like that.
I do too. Especially on a touchscreen.
No, it's great on that.
But it's going to have this kind of dual identity, so it can kind of change and adapt to the use of the PC. So one of the biggest complaints about Windows 8 was that, so for example, one of the reasons why my main PC here, which is a Windows 7 PC, is still Windows 7, is because Windows 8 is truly optimized for the laptop and mainly the touch experience, specifically built around the Surface line of devices. And so, although it works great for that with the swiping in from the side for the charms bars and things like that, it doesn't really make sense on a desktop.
They have a dumb name for that new function, though, don't they?
Where like you can, if you have a laptop that's a hybrid and you unplug it.
It has a dumb name. But anyways, keep going.
Yeah, you unplug it and it'll ask, do you want to use tablet mode of Windows 8 or Windows 10? And you say yes, and so then it remembers that, and so everything will then, it'll pop up the little keyboard. It'll reformat itself so that it's presenting you a tablet mode instead of a desktop mode. Which, if it works, will be awesome, and if it doesn't work, which it probably won't at first, will be annoying.
I don't know. I have faith in this version of Windows.
I'm more worried about the hardware manufacturers than I am about Windows, honestly.
Well, no, now they don't have to do anything. Here's the thing. Now, Microsoft can do really incredibly innovative things like they've been doing, and Lenovo can continue to do really interesting, innovative things like they've been. It's called Continuum, by the way.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And then everyone else will copy whatever Lenovo is doing.
Well, and it's confusing because the sharing between iPhones, iPads, and OS X, Yosemite is called. It has continuity and Continuum. It's a little rough on that. And so.
Word of the year, Continuum.
So I think, but HP and Dell and Acer can just
Acer and Asus
continue to push out the vague sometimes okay, sometimes utter dreck that they've been doing, it'll work just fine. And they'll dominate the low end of the market. And then Microsoft and Lenovo and Apple will own the high end of the market. And I'm okay with that. Because those are the only 3 PC makers I ever recommend anyways.
That's true. Let's see, what else we got here? They're enhancing the Windows Snap functionality like they have. They introduced, I think in Vista is where they introduced that. I didn't use Vista. So as far as I'm concerned, it was a Windows 7 feature. And they're expanding it so that you can have 4 docks.
Yeah.
So instead of currently what it is you snap to the left, you snap to the top, you snap to the right. Now you will be able to snap to the top left, snap to the bottom left, snap to the top right, snap to the bottom right.
Cool.
And have 4 different windows kind of snapped.
And they've kind of improved how that works. It's always been a little bit of a kludgy system.
Yeah.
I use it a ton.
It's super useful once you discover kind of. I never do it with the mouse. I always use on my desktop. I always use the window arrow key.
Sure.
That's the best way to do it in my opinion, because at any time I can minimize something and then maximize it or whatever I want to do.
See, I mostly do it on the Surface, and
with the
touchscreen. With the touchscreen, and so I have kind of a Word doc and then OneNote, and that's most of what this is, or like OneNote and Kindle. So if I'm in class, and a lot of my books are Kindle books now, and so we'll be reading from a text, and then I can still have my OneNote open in the other panel. That kind of stuff. It's really nice.
Let's see, what else are they adding? They're adding an expose kind of view, like
Mac had 10 years ago.
Had for years.
10 years.
As well as additional desktops. I don't remember what the Mac feature is called for that.
Mission Control or something. It has a dumb
No, Mission Control is the where all of the widgets come down.
Yeah. The tablet light. No, the Mission Control it's the tablet, the iPad menu screen.
Oh, okay.
Where you can get the little icons. I'm doing it right now on the MacBook Pro that records the show.
Yeah, it's the one where you can kind of switch between desktops.
Yeah.
And that's always something I thought was interesting that Mac kind of provided, but I never was able to use it correctly, but that's because it wasn't something I used on a daily basis.
Well,
I think I would use it a lot actually at work.
It makes a lot of I do it so that, like, for instance, it
would help with my ADD.
If I'm editing, I'll have one desktop that is Final Cut and have that full screen. And then I'll have like my browser and email open in another desktop, and then I'll have Photoshop open another desktop. So I can just kind of swipe and it on
right,
I have it set up on my iPad that it's just on my MacBook that it's just 3-finger swipe. So just 3-finger swipe and I'm over. Or like when I'm running a worship service live at work, I'll have like ProPresenter and the dock that we're running the service off of in one window, and then like additional resources over another one. So it's just a quick swipe over, and I use it all the time. You have to kind of retrain yourself a little bit.
But I can see the usefulness of it.
That's great.
And I'm excited for it to be in the operating system I use. But the other thing that's been rumored is that maybe Windows will be available for free for existing Windows 8 users.
They've made a very interesting statement in regards to that. They have said that this is the last version of Windows. That this is it. This is Windows. And they've got it right, and they're just going to tweak it from here forward. What that sounds like to me is...
Service packs forever.
No, Windows has become a service.
So,
just like there will not be a version of Office that isn't Office 365. Right.
Okay, so on that note, I actually really like the Office 365 and the Photoshop. I'm going to continue paying
Creative
for Photoshop. Cloud. My Creative Cloud is about to come up, and I'm going to continue paying for it because I have the photographer's deal where I get Lightroom and Photoshop together.
How much is that?
$10 a month. It's totally worth it.
That is worth it because I need both of those things.
The next time I get an email about it, because I get emails about it like once or twice a month, giving me the offer to do that, I'll send it to you. But it works great because I'm now on Lightroom 5.5, I think, and Photoshop. I have no idea. We don't have numbers.
I'm on CS3.
Well, this would be CS7.
Right. Well, because
it's just CS Creative Cloud.
Creative Cloud, right? Because what I want is Photoshop, InDesign, Lightroom, and Premiere.
Just get the Master Collection.
Yeah, but how much is that?
$50 a month.
Right. So no.
Right.
Actually,
well, if you want all of those, though, that's
right. That's the problem.
That's the answer.
I may just give up on Premiere.
If you give up on Premiere, you're looking at more like probably $20 to $30 a month at student rates.
Yeah, but yeah,
which will last for another year.
Right.
Well, but then you might be able to get a nonprofit rate.
I can always get a nonprofit rate. I don't work for a profit.
Right.
Nonprofit.
So really, the most interesting thing about this is they totally skipped Windows 9.
Well,
one of the jokes was that Windows is just counting in base 9.
Right. So that was one of the jokes. So I've heard some relatively logical theories. One of them is, of course, just it's a branding issue. This is such a step forward that we jumped a whole 2 numbers. And that's probably what it is. Right?
I think that's what it actually is.
A rumor, as reported on Daily Tech News Show, is from a man purporting to be a Microsoft dev. So I have no way to confirm this story. Is that to use Windows 9 would have really screwed up a lot of applications because they look for anything with a 9. Some applications look for just something with a Windows and then a 9 in it, and just assume it's 95 or 98 until you can't use that software.
Oh, that's a good thought.
So I think that's a little bit of bunk because it's not going to look at Windows 95 because your software looks at Windows 6.5 point whatever. So
right. It's looking at the NT kernel. It's not actually looking at the version of Windows. Right.
It's looking at the point code on the NT, the point code on the the NT kernel 6.5. What I can't remember what it is now, but whatever that is, whatever it is, that's what it's actually looking at.
To look up the Windows NT kernel again on this show.
Right. This is one of those great debates of when did they go to the NT kernel, and that's when they broke compatibility with interesting things. And yeah, no, I really enjoy all that discussion. Yeah.
By the way, Windows. Let's see, Windows NT 4.0. Okay, yeah. So we went from 95 was a totally different thing,
right?
Because we went
so it was 98.
Yeah, because Windows 2000 is
NT kernel.
Is NT.
That's the switch. And so then it's an
NT version 5.0.
And then 2000 forward is
2004
NT kernel.
was all NT based.
Right, and ME was not.
Well, and that's whenever I saw Windows, I was trying to install something on Windows XP, and it told me like, "Oh, you don't have the proper NT kernel." I was like, "What is an NT kernel?"
Yeah. Network technology.
That's when I had to figure that out. But anyways.
Also, you can download a preview version of Windows 10 now, and we have.
It's a technical preview. I'm trying to get it to run in a VirtualBox, and my VirtualBox is getting angry at me.
And I'm going to be setting it up on basically doing a clean install on a hardware system. And so we're actually going to talk about it on Techie Stalking Tech Tonight on Monday or Tuesday, whenever we record
whenever you get whenever you get that show kind of served up to you.
Yeah, whenever that show happens, that and Shadow of Mordor, the 2 things we're going to talk about on that show. So look, we just haven't. I mean, that went up yesterday, and we both have busy lives and can't totally run everything around Microsoft's schedule.
Unfortunately. So, I mean, Trey, what do you think about this whole kind of?
I think it's the right move, assuming the tablet stuff still works. I think this is the right move. I think this actually starts to look like one Windows that can do everything. Because Windows 8 is really great on my Surface Pro 3, but I haven't installed it on my desktop because I don't see the purpose, even though I know there are things objectively that are better. And
it works great on my my Lenovo Yoga. Like, I love it on the Yoga, but I would never want it on this desktop. I've thought about it. I've gone back and forth about it. Mainly because, I get more RAM.
Well, now that you can boot straight into desktop mode, I mean, at this point, you could.
Right. I would think about it, honestly.
But if it still works in tablet mode and actually looks like a better version of the desktop, not just, oh, damn it, I just want this to look like Windows 7, but, this is something that is better for desktop users. If this actually hits both of those things, which, by the way, Windows has been promising to do since Windows Vista.
Vista was the solution, lest we remind you.
Right, but because, Vista was being Longhorn, which got dumbed down into Vista. was being developed around the time pen tablet computing was taking off in whatever way it did. And we realized that XP just wasn't quite right. And so they came up with a version of XP that was specifically per pen-based computing. That was kind of dumb and kludgy.
And it didn't. Well, that was when XP had like a bajillion different versions.
Right, for Media Center and blah, blah, blah. And so like Vista was an attempt to integrate that. And then 7 was an attempt to integrate that, but also make it be able to work on a netbook. And then 8 was like, okay, we're going all in on this one thing. And it's kind of, I know, a lot of people blame Steven Sinofsky, and what do I know? But that seems like it because he's kind of a tyrannical thinker. And he says, no, it will be this way. Mm-hmm. And we're like, but what, like, most of your users are still using the desktop. We're going to do it this way. These are not the droids you're looking for. Like, so I think if this makes good on its promises, then sure.
Don't be crazy, Trey.
Well, Windows 8 works great on a tablet. It actually works fine on a desktop. But they lost a marketing war. And they didn't introduce the boot to desktop function early enough.
Well, and I do really think that was specifically based on what we've heard from Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, is that it seems that Steven Sinofsky did rule with an iron fist when it came to, no, we're making this different.
Hey, Jimmy, and how many versions of IE are on Windows 10?
2.
1. 1.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me Windows 8. That's why I had the answer already ready.
Windows 10. 1. They fixed my IE problem.
I don't know which IE I need.
So IE just kind of operates in continuum. It's a miracle.
See how that works?
Yeah.
Continuum?
Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
That's actually, so to be fair, I think that's actually really good branding. But
yeah. And if it works, I think they've done it. And I'll be very happy with this operating system. And I'm not unhappy with Windows 8, specifically on my Surface. And I actually use my Surface as a tablet more than I use it as a laptop. Because I'm surrounded by things with keyboards.
It's more designed as a tablet anyways.
Sure.
A large tablet that can do laptop stuff.
Right. I mean, I do a lot of my typing on it. But in terms of like real laptop work, that mouse is terrible. And I have a MacBook Pro sitting right here. So like that's where, if I have to do like design work or whatever, that's what I did do one logo design on that. And I was like, but I was on a plane. So what choice did I have? But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to try it out. I'm not going to install it on my Surface Pro 3 because that's a device I use every day. I'm going to put it basically on a box that I'm not using and just to play with it. I got to
go pull one of the boxes out of the storage.
Out of cold storage.
It was going to become NAS, but now it's going to become this.
Yeah, well, I think it can become a NAS.
Ooh, I got to be careful. That's where all the media backup is.
Yeah, you might want to work with that.
I need to pull that drive.
Yeah. So, just like Windows is trying to do something revolutionary, I love a good actual revolution.
You want a revolution.
Yeah. So my undergraduate thesis was about how the internet could be used to overthrow governments. So I'm always deeply interested in technology of major protest movements. And at the moment, Hong Kong is experiencing Occupy Central, which is their name for the financial district of Hong Kong. And it's a movement protesting mainland China's exertion of greater control over the politics of Hong Kong, which was a former British colony, and part of the treaty was that Hong Kong would have a certain level of autonomy maintained.
It still kind of does its own thing. There's a separate Google site for Hong Kong.
Right, but mainland China is the Chinese Communist Party is starting to like exert a little more control over Hong Kong politics, and they're freaking out for good reason. On the tech side, they're using a mesh networking technology called FireChat to communicate. So this was technology originally developed to allow people to communicate when cell reception is poor, like at major conferences, think like CES, or like Coachella or Burning Man, where there is no cell reception. What it does is it allows you to communicate using Bluetooth or other short-range communication technologies, and all the phones connect together into a mesh, hence mesh networking. So like I connect to your phone, and your phone connects to somebody else's phone, and all of those phones just pass messages amongst each other without connecting to, like, a central tower or a central Wi-Fi network. This means that you're not reliant on infrastructure, like cell towers, which can get shut down in the case of a protest, or don't exist in the case of Burning Man. And it's kind of, as long as you're within 80 feet of your nearest partner, of your nearest
Well,
other
I think
person.
this is Wi-Fi is what they're using specifically.
It's not. It's some of it's Wi-Fi, some of it's Bluetooth, and some of it's whatever the technology is behind AirDrop, which has a dumb Apple name. So it's using all of this wide array of technologies. It can also work over the cell network,
Right.
but it's using a whole bunch of different things. It's basically, if it's a communication technology on a phone, this thing can use it. And in that way, it's pretty smart software. So you can't stop the signal and all that. The protesters have been using FireChat, and while right now it's kind of a nearly unmanageable fire hose of information that they're experiencing, and it doesn't have encryption, so whatever you post is just public. So use a fake identity, y'all. It gives people options if the government shuts down the towers. And this has also kind of been the big breakout moment for FireChat. They now have 100,000 users in Hong Kong and have seen as many as 30,000 people using the service at the same time, which is just huge numbers for them. I mean, that beats the heck out of Burning Man. By the way, I hate Burning Man. So, so my question to you, Jimmy, is, can mesh networking be kind of the protest technology of the future?
I mean, I think yes is the obvious answer, because in a society, not even in a society, in a world where we all have these connected devices. I mean, you've been the one that has said multiple times that the thing that has solved the internet problem in, like, Kenya is 3G.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everyone has a phone that has a 3G signal. Mm-hmm. Now, what that also means is that even if the 3G towers go down, if you have something like this, you can organize a protest.
And protest movements, I think, are uniquely set up for this kind of thing because everyone's in a relatively compact space.
Right.
So back in...
It's also a way to disseminate information within the protest very rapidly.
Right. Which used to happen over, like, in the Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2004, that was happening over text message. In the Otpor over stuff in Yugoslavia, it was happening via Web 1.0 because it was 2001, and that's all that there really was.
Because Yugoslavia.
But in Ukraine in 2004, which I think is kind of a good signpost to look at this, because it's another relatively developed country. But at that time, it was a lot of, like, Web 2.0 stuff, but in terms of, like, when it ended up as a protest movement in the center of the country, they were using the web to get information out, but in terms of coordination, it was all cell phones. Same thing with Malaysia in 2007, Kenya in 2007. I mean, it was all done via SMS. But, again, that is so reliant on towers. And kind of the core of my undergraduate thesis was basically internet revolutions work when there isn't state control. What this does is this is one of the first technologies that truly bypasses state control.
Now, it also, the problem it doesn't solve is if they take the towers down, no information is getting out. So it makes it so they can communicate with each other, but if none of them can get a signal out, that information is not getting out.
Right, but there are easy ways around that. For instance, the international media is there.
That's true.
This is not happening in outer Mongolia. This is happening in Hong Kong.
Right. No. Okay. Yeah. In this specific case, yes, it is happening in Hong Kong. But
also, like, Hong Kong's not a real big place. So even if you shut down the cell system, people can go to hardwired internet. I mean, news can get out of there.
And Hong Kong is extraordinarily urbanized and developed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So you're not going to... This would be like trying to shut down, like, New York City.
Yeah.
Like, it's just good, nice try. First off, a New Yorker is going to hit you in the face with a baseball bat, but...
Yeah, you're going to like it.
Trey speaks New Yorker.
Yeah, I speak... Your mother. Touche. Great. Racism. I taught you to be European racist, and God, teach
Hey,
me.
I'm American racist too.
Yeah, great, fantastic.
Look, I'm in the state the size of France that has 7 abortion clinics, so I'm just.
they're doing great. Let me tell you. Fascinating.
We have no bias on this show.
Yeah, no, you're gonna hear that in a minute.
I love this story. Like this is awesome, and I really hope that I really hope that it continues to expand to other protests.
Well, they've also said that they're gonna they're working on a private messaging feature that is encrypted, so that like you can do person-to-person coordination without having to deal with the government being able to read everything you're saying.
Because so the thing I think could be interesting, an interesting place where I would like to see something like this take off, is like in Abu Dhabi or, these places where the FIFA, the World Cup is supposed to happen, and there's rumblings of like, oh yeah, they're like conscripting people and then
terrible.
working them to death.
Yeah, it's terrible.
To build this stuff. So I would love to see something like an encrypted personal messaging system using FireChat, because there's nothing the government can do about it.
Also, this would have been great in high school. This would have meant I wouldn't have had to set a bootleg WoW server. Like, this would have solved...
but the bootleg WoW server was the FireChat of its day.
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah. We basically FireChatted, but they could have shut down the network. Here, you can't stop the signal. You can't stop the signal, man. So, speaking of stopping the signal, for what seems like years now, people have been predicting the death of Facebook, the stopping of its signal, if you will.
And then it keeps growing.
Yeah.
And Mark Zuckerberg stands on stage and looks smug.
Yeah, no, he's like my age. Every time the social networking giant changes some part of its privacy policy, the internet goes into temporary rebellion. And by rebellion, I mean posting lots of complaints on Facebook or maybe Twitter, but never Google+.
It's a ghost town.
The thing about all these predictions and complaints is that what we have yet to see is any other social network step up as a true successor or a replacement for Facebook. Well, this past week, another contender tossed its hat. Well, actually, Ella's been around for a while, but came to prominence and tossed its hat into a
all the tech press decided that
this was the week that Ella
this week was going to be the week that Ella was going to make it big.
So
I'm requesting an invitation for Ella right now.
Say hello to
Hello. Oh.
This currently invite-only social network has been up and running for several months, but for whatever reason has pushed its way to the front and center of the tech news cycle this week. The creators of Ello's basic pitch is that as the social network we wanted. As far as its features, it's sort of a Twitter-Tumblr mashup where users are able to post pictures, videos, short statuses, and of course tag others and comment on their friends' content. One of Ello's biggest draws is for those ready to abandon the Facebook ship is its focus on privacy. Ello is ad-free and doesn't make money off of user data. It gives users options to join under any name they choose, and even gives them options to turn off the site's own analytics, creating a more private social network. Ello has certainly made a big splash over the past week, but doesn't have what it takes to go the distance. And by that, I mean, do you think they can actually make money to stay open by not monetizing user data?
So that's kind of the thing I think is interesting. How do they monetize then?
Well, they've talked about, there's been rumblings of like charging for features. If you want the mobile app, you pay $2 and...
Okay, so it's a freemium model.
It's, like a freemium model.
So,
it's like your Spotify's and your Pandora's and your...
That's kind of interesting.
Well, it's certainly better than the ones that are like, this one costs $1,000 and is like a country club on the internet. Yes.
Yes, I need that.
That's
so
what I need in my life.
While Trey was doing his intro, I actually requested an invitation. So Ello's invitation only. Requested an invitation. And after I clicked request an invitation, it said, your social network is owned by advertisers. Every post you share, every friend you make, and every link you follow is tracked, recorded. I know. It really has that kind of pace, doesn't it? Every post you share, every friend you make, I'll be watching you.
I'll be watching you.
Just remember that they had to make it I'll be missing you so that it wasn't nearly as creepy.
Yeah.
It's about a stalk. That's
I'll be watching you.
And then it says we believe in a social network can be a tool for empowerment, not a tool to deceive, coerce, and manipulate, but a place to connect, create, and celebrate life.
Yeah.
You are not a product. But I think that what's more interesting about Ello than them necessarily stealing from... So, like, one of the reasons they got a lot of press this week was because of the LGBTQ real name policy on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that Facebook kind of said, no, you have to use your real name.
Well, it was a little complicated. So, like, someone was basically just going in there and reporting dozens of transvestites for using not their birth name, not their legal names. And Facebook probably wouldn't have taken any action, but it just sort of got lost in the shuffle, and no one really figured out that this was one person just outing a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. And so Facebook backtracked and was like, oh, hey, no, we didn't realize that was going on. Y'all don't have to use your real name. The name that's on your driver's license. You don't have to use it.
Today's news was Facebook apologized
right.
for all of that. But that's one of the reasons why this kind of came up.
They still haven't actually changed their real names policy. They're just like, okay, so that was dumb, and we just kind of let this guy out you, didn't we?
We're going to go with gray area, and we're sorry.
Yeah. It's like that time they got rid of only having one gender, or only having two genders on Facebook.
I love that relationship status by default now is you have to ask.
Yeah,
So ironically, my girlfriend on Facebook has her relationship status hidden from me. So I've asked her before. To which she responded to me with a text message, I hate you.
That's really funny. I'm just going to sit there and keep clicking that button.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now you know that. By the way, mine's hidden too, so you can do that to me too.
This is great.
I think what's more interesting about this, though, is the "you are not a product" kind of tagline. Because after the iPhone announcement,
and Tim Cook's thing on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, Tim Cook had his whole thing on 60 Minutes about how with Android, you are the product.
Yeah, no joke.
Well, with Google, you are the product, and that's true. This is and Trey and I were actually having this conversation earlier this week that I see it as a mutually beneficial. I am the product. Like, I get something for giving Google data.
Sure.
It's not like so Facebook, I don't actually think I get anything of significant value for the amount of data that they get on me.
Yes, and milk cows get all the hay they can eat.
Yes.
And the goose that lays the golden egg gets all the feed it can eat. You're just the golden goose. You're still the product. You're still making the thing that they're selling. They're selling you.
For Google?
And Facebook, and apparently everyone who is an Apple or Ello. Hello.
God.
Yeah, so terrible.
Yeah, that's not going to really work long term, by the way, Ello. But watch as we experience network difficulties.
I don't think this is going to work.
No, I don't think it's going to be a long-term solution.
Because, first of all, fewer people really care. Clearly. Right? I mean, we've been banging this privacy drum for years. And Facebook just keeps growing.
Remember that time where Facebook said, you know what? We're going to put to a vote whether or not you guys get to vote on our changes anymore.
And no one voted.
And less than 1% of Facebook voted.
Right.
To keep your right to vote.
And so, like, the tech press is generally made up of people who care about this and are blowing the whistle, and that's part of our function.
Right, well, and that's important. Someone needs to blow the whistle when crazy stuff happens.
Right. But I don't think this is going to take off. One, these things drive off of critical mass. And it used to be that we thought of, social networking sites in phases, your MySpaces and your Friendsters and your Live Journals and blah, blah, blah. But it's now like everyone has a Facebook maybe you use other services. Maybe you use Tumblr or Twitter or Instagram or WhatsApp or Snapchat.
But
you
that
probably
point,
have a Facebook too.
right?
In the same way that I have an email. I use all kinds of other messaging services. But I still haven't.
Email's not going away.
But email's not going away. And I think Facebook has become like Skype and email, where it's just kind of rooted in how you work. That it's just like, I have a resume and I have a Facebook. Everyone has it. It's your home on the web. And everyone's there, even if you like using these other services, like you don't want to send your naked pictures over Facebook, right? That's what Snapchat's for, I've been told. If you want to message people on the cheap, that's what WhatsApp's for. If you want to do specifically pictures that look terrible, that's what Instagram, a Facebook company, is for.
Well, so that's the interesting thing, I think, because I was talking to a number of kind of 25 to 30-year-olds,
bunch of savages,
and specifically at a church group, and we were talking about kind of Facebook and how all of our generation is on Facebook and uses it heavily as a communication platform. Because I used to try to coordinate events through email, then realized that was dumb, and started coordinating events through Facebook, and guess what? It works. But that a number of them work with the middle school and high school age kids at the church, and none of them are on Facebook. I mean, even if they have a Facebook account, they don't use it because that's where our generation is, and that's where their parents are. And so they're using much more of the Instagrams and the Snapchats as a means of communication.
But they don't seem to be as interested in a social networking site like we're interested in. And so Ello isn't appealing to what they want. It's not a lightweight messaging, imaging sharing service, which seems to be, that's what Instagram and Snapchat and WhatsApp are. That's not what this is. This is a Facebook Twitter clone, but with the privacy thing.
Man, I remember when I was into the lightweight messaging image sharing app.
It was AIM.
It worked great.
That was the halcyon days of AIM.
Literally everybody was on AIM.
And you would
say, "Oh, I'm on MSN Messenger," and people would look like,
"What the hell's wrong with you?
Like you were a savage."
Are you from Europe? That's where they use MSN Messenger. In America, we use America Online. That's why it's called America Online. And then try and access AIM in Europe was a pain in the ass. I excited to do that several times. But no, some of my fondest internet memories are every evening in high school working on my homework and talking on AIM. Because all of my friends were there, and you could do all your best flirting and all your best whatever, and your best fights. So many fights. I still have those chat logs.
I would say the best thing about AIM, though, was the chat logs, because everything was logged. And so you could always just bring back up you remember you said.
Yeah, no. Everyone became a court reporter. It was great. But the best thing was away messages. That was that's so much better than a status. And I've waxed philosophical on this before, but, it's better than like a status on Facebook because that changes so often. You kept an away message for a while, and it said something deep. Maybe
when you found a good one, you didn't want to change it.
Right. So maybe
you got to say something that was just as good again.
Right.
Also, that's why our generation waxes philosophically through Facebook statuses.
Right, because we learned that through away messages. For instance, if it's the last day of exams, perhaps maybe you post Morpheus, "What if tomorrow the war could be over? Isn't that worth fighting for? Isn't that worth dying for? In this night holds the meaning of our very lives." Exams were very stressful in high school. So, yeah, I'm tired of Ello. I don't care.
So Ello really, I think that it was just that people got bored at the end of last week and the beginning of this week. Yeah. They're like, Microsoft thing hasn't happened yet. Apple hype is kind of dead. We need something. Ello. That's a good idea. Let's do that. We haven't talked about privacy and social networking in a while.
Good luck to them, but I don't think they're going to make it.
I'm going to join and see what's on there. I'll report back.
Okay, so there's no clean way to transition out of that, and I just blanked out the intro. So I, back at the height of the Second Gulf War, I fixed it. I fixed it. It's fine. Back at the height of the Second Gulf War, I used to watch the war in Iraq, I used to watch Keith Olbermann, The Countdown with Keith Olbermann every night. I was living in Europe at the time, and that was kind of my connection back to American politics. And he did something called the special comment, where he would write these long, well-constructed monologues railing against the Bush administration. And they were brilliantly constructed and just oratory masterpieces. Very biased, maybe a little over the top.
No bias on this show.
Right, but they were really well written. And so I'm going to switch so that I'm the only one in frame, and I'm going to do my own special comment.
Goodbye, Trey.
You'll be back on screen in a minute. But I'm going to do vaguely a Keith Olbermann style special comment on something a story that's been bothering me for a really long time. So let's see if this works. Hey, it worked. Okay. So Gamergate's been a story that I've been following / researching for close to 2 months now. And I haven't yet really brought it up on this show and barely brought it up on the other show because I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. Gamergate, as it's become known, it started with an ex-boyfriend of Depression Quest developer Zoe Quinn posting intimate details of their relationship onto the internet. People who read it carefully, and this was thousands and thousands of words, and I'll admit that I've read every one of them. People who read it carefully noticed that one of the people that Zoe was accused of cheating on her boyfriend with was a games journalist who had once written positively about Zoe's game. Once written positively about Zoe's game. From there, the internet exploded into a plume of rage that has been going on for nearly 2 months, with a level of harassment that curdles the blood. It is a pitched battle between quote-unquote gamers and quote-unquote social justice warriors, which seems to mean anyone that participates in games criticism on a more adult level, like noticing that the roles of women in games are often downright shameful. These gamers are using death threats, rape threats, and outing people's locations to intimidate them to try to drive them out of the industry in the name of ending corruption in games journalism. Now, deep down, there may need to be a conversation about the relationships between games journalists and games developers on all levels, but this conversation cannot happen while this level of harassment is ongoing. Several games journalists have left the industry, but the scariest part is that this week, Intel pulled their sponsorship of Gamasutra because of a coordinated plan of complaints by Gamergate folks. Intel, one of the largest institutions in the tech world, is frightened by a bunch of whiny children on the internet. I wanted to bring this up and lend my
metaphorical children.
I wanted to bring this up to lend my own voice to this issue. Stop the harassment. Put the internet guns down and we can talk when the shooting is over. Intel, you're a bunch of cowards. Gamergates, you're at best hypocrites and cowards. This has to stop. This is deplorable. This is inhumane. There may be problems in games journalism, and I, for one, recognize those. But when you are threatening people with rape and murder, this is not a conversation that needs to be had in the public sphere. You are hiding behind anonymity, and you have manipulated Intel into acting cowardly. You all suck. Just frankly, you all suck. I have no more eloquent words to lend for you. You are crappy people. You want to say that this is about corruption. Abso-frickin-lutely there may be corruption. Who knows? But you're not going about this in a way that is civilized or worthy of civilized conversation. So I'll pan back to your shot now, Jimmy. So, Jimmy, I know that possibly I spend way too much time on this story, and maybe you not as much.
I thought you were going to say the internet, but you continue.
I spend way too much time on the internet. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think I will go ahead and just echo that point. Realistically, problems with gaming in general at this point is that there are a lot of people in gaming that, especially with the way modern gaming has kind of progressed, in that it's no longer couch co-op and it's more online co-op, it's much more of a solitary kind of existence as far as an in-person. Like,
sure.
Granted, my college roommate played a lot of WoW, and he had his large group of WoW friends that they would go and do raids. And it was a way for him to keep in touch with all these people, some of which he knew in real life, some of which he didn't. But it's fundamentally a solitary existence. And as a result of that, things that are okay for you to say when, you beat someone at a game are not okay for you to say in the public sphere. Like, it's not okay for you to threaten rape. And
arguably, it's never okay.
No, it's never okay.
But gaming has for a very long time been wrapped up in a very bro culture.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
I would like to call attention to the original Tomb Raider games.
Right. And gaming has for a very long time been a very male-oriented, marketed towards men, marketed towards straight white men specifically.
Doom is another good example of this.
Or most games, the fact
well,
that
I'm going for older games.
But
though,
even
as
The
examples.
Last of Us, women are just a plot device in The Last of Us.
Well, as they are
in BioShock Infinite, two of the
Infinite.
best story-driven games of last year. Even those didn't break the mold of male protagonists supported by women, right? Where women are a plot device,
right.
And so there are a group of critics that have become really outspoken about this, and they have been labeled by the Gamergate folks the social justice warriors. These are folks who I deeply respect, like Carolyn formerly of GameSpot, or Patrick Klepek over at Giant Bomb are the two kind of.
Where'd Carolyn end up?
She's currently freelancing.
Okay.
GameSpot had a bunch of layoffs, and she just hasn't landed on her feet yet. So, good luck, Carolyn. We wish you all the best. But folks like them, and there are others, have been labeled social justice warriors, and there's been a tension between these self-proclaimed gamers and the labeled SJWs, the social justice warriors.
Okay, so this is the thing I don't understand. How is being a social justice warrior a negative?
Well,
how is that being pitched by the gamers as a negative?
Because the gamers see it, and that it's
as
an attack on
their culture.
No, that's an attack on them, and that there's something wrong with them.
Is this like a reverse racism argument?
Well, kind of, yeah. And it's to say that, games are supposed to be fun, or games are supposed to be whatever, or this elite media group, who, by the way, don't get paid real well, are trying to take away our thing from us. And that's language they use. And this is not, I am not using language that the Gamergates themselves don't use. I mean, I haven't just been reading the social justice warriors, of which I would count myself one. I haven't just been reading the material that I agree with. I've been very deliberately reading all of the stuff I disagree with, or as much of it as I can get my hands on, to really understand it. And a lot of what they're doing is saying you're taking away our culture, and a lot of it is they're coming up with frankly implausible conspiracy theories. That it's like these really tenuous leaps of logic. So here's an example from the Internet Aristocrat, a very prominent Gamergater. He's done a series of YouTube videos on this, and I've watched all of them to kind of try to understand his perspective. And so one games journalist is accused of having slept with Zoe Quinn. Okay? And he wrote something nice about Zoe once. Maybe before, maybe after they were in a relationship. Who cares? It doesn't really matter.
Well, it appears that based on from the original stuff that the alleged sleeping with occurred after the
right. But I really don't care to discuss the details of Zoe Quinn's sex life, because who gives a shit? Like,
it's irrelevant to this discussion.
Could not be less relevant. My point is one games journalist is accused of sleeping with Zoe Quinn and writing positive coverage. So the accusation is then maybe any journalist who wrote something positive about Zoe's social justice grounded game, Depression Quest, may have slept with her. Like Patrick Klepek. But of course Patrick Klepek hasn't, but then Patrick Klepek has gotten weeks of harassment accusing him of having cheated on his wife with Zoe Quinn on zero evidence. Or Danny O'Dwyer, who did a lot of coverage of Depression Quest and actually did a really touching thing, because he, like me, we both suffer from depression. And I had this really meaningful gaming moment of watching him do a live stream of Depression Quest, share his own story, and talk about, what it is to live with depression. It was a really cool thing. He did that video long before he'd even ever met Zoe. So he has this tweets like, he tweeted Zoe at Quinspiracy, like, hey, remember that time I covered your game before I'd even met you? It's just like, screw you, Gamergate. But Gamergate don't like Zoe for a number of reasons, and one of them is they don't think her game is game enough. That her game,
right. It's this tension of what is a game.
Right. It's her game, like Gone Home, which was our number 2 game of last year. Certainly in our very high.
No, it was our number 2.
It was our number 2, and
no. It was the number. I want to say it was number 3, and then BioShock Infinite was 2, and then Last of Us was 1.
Sure.
But it was definitely top 3.
It was definitely top 3, and why it wasn't number 1. It almost ended up number 1, but why it wasn't was because I just thought The Last of Us had more there. That it held that same, almost that nearly the same level of artistry, not quite, but nearly the same level of artistry for a lot longer. And so to me, it was a better overall accomplishment.
Right,
but I don't want to
a lot more.
But I don't want to take away from the accomplishment of Gone Home. But there is this tension about the social justice warriors love these games that aren't games that are ruining gaming culture. Right. So,
whatever, guys.
Like, yeah. But and I would be perfectly fine with just rolling my eyes and going, whatever, I disagree with you, who cares? The problem is it's manifesting itself in violence.
Oh, and the way that it's manifesting itself is the problem with this. Okay. Voltaire, I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Sure.
But not in this way.
No. I defend your right to say that Gone Home isn't a game, that Carolyn Pettit is wrong, that Patrick Klepek is wrong, that Zoe Quinn's a bad game developer, whatever the hell you want to say. That Phil Fish is a jerk. He may well be. Who knows? Right?
Scream fire in a crowded theater.
But that's one thing. It's another thing to dox people, which is to release their personal information onto the wider web, opening them up to physical harassment. To verbally harass them over the internet, to threaten rape and death upon them and their loved ones, to do this concerted thing of harassment. If you want to have a conversation about what is gaming, about where it's going, about the indie scene, which, I'm not usually a big defender of the indie scene. Mostly those are games that just don't hit me. Very few of them do, very occasionally. Defession Quest, Papers, Please, and Gone Home from last year. Those landed with me, but very few do. We can have these kind of adult conversations about what is the real price of marginalized peoples and what are their real role, and the fact that in the end game developers fund most games journalism indirectly, and that indie devs and games journalists tend to be really good friends. Then there are sites that handle it real well. For instance, Jeff Gerstmann won't review games from people he's really good friends with. You'll notice on Giant Bomb, there's never a review of a Harmonix game, because they're like best friends with the Harmonix guys. They don't review Disney Infinity, because they're like best friends with John Vignacchi. They didn't review Divekick, because they're best friends with the Iron Galaxy guys. And they're really open about that. It's like, no, when asked, they're like, no, we're too close to that. We're not going to know. We wouldn't dream of it. And some others don't handle it as well. And that's a conversation that can be had. And that is actually an interesting conversation. But that's not what's going on here.
That's a conversation that can be extended beyond gaming, even to just general technology coverage.
Or any industry.
You start talking about, who we talk about with Microsoft so much. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, they are in it, man.
Right.
They're have been in it for a long, long time. They know the people. They know people. Lots of people.
Right. They're both on first name basis with Ballmer. Those kind, they're in it. But that's relationships is some of how you do journalism. And maybe there's some ethical, there may well be some ethical issues. I don't want to deny that point. That's not what I'm saying. And that's not actually what most people on the social justice side are really saying. Yeah, there may be some issues here. But the violence that's being done is unacceptable. Who cares about Zoe Quinn's personal life? This is just another time where there's this weird double standard where women can do, women get held accountable for their terrible actions. What? This isn't 1950. Who cares? That doesn't change the quality of her games. You don't like her games, so you're willing to throw her under the bus. But when you're no longer having a conversation about her games, you're having a conversation about her sex life. Who cares? You want to know who the real jerk in that is? The guy who posted the intimate details of his love life on the internet to save people from the evils of Zoe Quinn. That dude's a jerk. He's the problem.
I mean,
part of it.
I thought we all learned this, 5 to 10 years ago with LiveJournal.
Right. I mean, it's essentially what it is. It's just like a WordPress site about all the terrible things that I don't care. I don't. Depression Quest is phenomenal in what it, not necessarily in how it plays, but in what it says. And as gaming grows as a medium, there will be a part of it that a critical analysis will develop.
I don't actually, I'm going to go with Depression Quest could be a total crap game.
Sure.
Could be. In this case, I'm not necessarily going to say it is, but even if it's not this game and it was another game that is just total crap.
Some games are crap. Even the ones that people like occasionally.
You still don't. I'm sorry. This is still not acceptable.
It's like there are two different discussions happening. They wrap themselves in, and now the Gamergaters have kind of got this like, so how they got Intel, to background to the actual news, how they got Intel to stop sponsoring Gamasutra is they did this campaign where they basically found these articles where the social justice emo people were reacting to the harassment and how negative gaming culture is. And they took those articles to sponsors, in this case Intel, and say, look that they're using, and this is their language, they're using hate speech against their audience, and you need to stop sponsoring them because they're deliberately driving their audience away from the site. And so that's the tactics that Gamergate's using. That when people react to the horrific things that they are doing, they then take that as, you're using hate speech against us, while they're using rape and death threats. And what they're being countered with is logical arguments about aspects of gamer culture, which are terrible. They're getting sponsors, a huge sponsor pulled from Gamasutra. And they're turning themselves into the victims while they continue to harass anyone who speaks out against what they have to say. It's inhumane. This needs to stop. When was this acceptable? There may be problems, but we can't talk about that when you're pointing a gun at people's heads. Negotiations can never happen at the point of a gun, right? Because those are we don't talk about it, right? Those are coerced confessions. Though people are working under coercion, and they're working under the threat of having their internet lives ruined for speaking out. It needs to stop.
This is off the deep end.
Like
beyond off the deep end. Like, this is ridiculous. This is... No research on podcasts.
Well, I'm trying to see if I can pull some quotes. But maybe not.
But I don't know. We beat this horse pretty well, though.
Let's see if I can get this fast. Nah, I'm not going to be able to get it fast. Okay.
I mean, and I will also then say, I will invite anyone that disagrees with us to please send us an email, comment on the site, comment on Facebook.
Come at me, bro.
This we can have a conversation, but
not the point of a loaded gun.
But understand that you can threaten us with all of these things, and we will look at you and go, "That's nice.
That's great.
Stop doing that."
Yeah. So
you can get all of our sponsors to pull their funding.
Yeah, get all of our sponsors to pull their funding. Come at me, bro. Like, yeah. So speaking of gaming culture, it's this week's last call.
So as games become more like movies, like The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite and Beyond Two Souls is a perfect example, it seems only logical that our favorite games will become actual movies. However, this week a kind of strange crossover was announced. The popular game Tetris will be made into a live-action, feature-length sci-fi motion picture, according to the Tetris Company. This is also not the first arcade game that has been optioned for the movies, with Space Invaders being optioned a few months ago by Warner Brothers. So, Trey, are you the first in line for this geometric adventure?
I was.
They're not putting feet on the blocks. I was told that. It said that specifically.
The other day when I was in the shower, decided that I was going to come up with my top 5 games of all time, and Tetris is certainly one of them. That I've played specifically. They were Persona 4 Golden, in no particular order. Persona 4 Golden, Assassin's Creed 2, Pokemon Yellow, Tetris, and the original Sims. Those are my top 5 games. Tetris is certainly one of them. But I like the documentary about Tetris. That's really cool.
Right. Well, and there's an Ars Technica link here, and it links out to, in the meantime, go watch the Tetris documentary.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
This is fascinating.
But it's not necessarily going to turn into really good premise for a movie. Are the blocks personified?
Look, we got no details as to what the hell this is doing.
Yeah.
I'm not holding my breath. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Excellent.
This is probably going to make even less sense than Battleship the movie.
Hey, but that movie made $300 million.
Right. Well, it is at least a a board game about blowing up ships. So you can make a movie about blowing up ships. Okay.
This was optioned by the same group that did the Mortal Kombat movie in the 90s.
Yeah, and we all know how great those were.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So on that note, it's time to end. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you want to comment on #Gamergate, come at me, bro.
Yet. I ain't scared.
I ain't scared. What are you going to do? If you have any feedback,
see this face?
Podcast at techslastcall.com, Facebook.com/techslastcall, Pinterest.com/techslastcall, or at techslastcall on the Twitters. Wherever you find us, we'll be seeing you on the interwebs.
Press the button, Trey.
Yeah, it's broken.